now that says it's going to be recorded. And thanks for joining. I am going to be back and forth between the slide deck and the live site. So I'd encourage you to have the live site open and log into your account. And then also feel free, come off mute. I'll have different stopping points periodically where I'll pause, ask for any questions. I'll also pause and give you time to look at your own data. So, I mean, pretty traditional. I'll do an I do of show you some things, then have you jump into your own data, look at that, and then share out any questions you might have. And again, feel free to come off mute and do so. And then just an introduction, my name is Megan Thompson. I'm our lead implementation specialist here at IXL. I have been in education since 2008. I started off as a high school special education teacher and went from there to middle school. I spent the bulk of my time in middle school math and ELA and was a middle school principal. And then I used IXL in my classroom and as an administrator. And so I try to pepper in some implementation strategies that worked well for me. And now I use it with my own nephews. If you're with me long enough, you'll hear me talk about them and things I've learned in tutoring them utilizing IXL. And then the most important thing for you all is my email address. So please take note of that and feel free to reach out and ask me any questions you have. I'm happy to help. Ooh, got stuck on my words there. So I wanted to take a minute before we jump in, since we do have we've got, let's see, 5 other people here with me. Just take a second, introduce yourself. Tell me your name, what you teach, what subject and grade level you teach. So let's start with, we'll start with Alicia. I'm just going down my chat list. Alicia, yeah, what grade and subject do you teach?
Yeah, I'm Alicia. I'm a case manager. So I just help with working with students towards their IEP goals, and I teach 11th grade.
Okay, awesome. Alicia, I don't yet have, but if we have time, I'll get into quizzes. Quizzes is one of the newest features. And I've heard quite a bit from my folks who are case managers that the quizzes feature has been really nice for progress monitoring, because you can create your own number of items, questions there. So then you're able to do the progress, like 7 out of 10 items, and when progress monitoring and writing their goals. So if we have time, I'll get to it. If not, I'll send you some resources on that.
That would be amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's do Cindy. Cindy, are you there? Okay, Cindy, we'll come back to you. Kenya?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was finishing a parent phone call. So sorry.
No, it's okay. Just tell me, introduce yourself. What grade and subject do you teach?
Sure. I'm a case manager and interventionist at Gratz. I actually teach modified science.
Okay.
And I teach all grades 9 through 12. I also teach AP biology.
Okay. Cindy, the quizzes right now, though, what I was just telling Alicia about, they're only out for math and ELA, but they're actively working on it for science. So those are coming out. So be on the lookout for the next, I believe, 2 weeks is what their goal is, to have those out for science. Okay, Kenya.
Hi, I'm sharing a room with somebody, so somebody's talking in the background, but
no
I'm at the Gratz campus. I'm a math intervention teacher for 9th grade algebra 1.
Okay, awesome. Welcome. Geithner, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, hi, I'm Christina Geithner. Teach reading intervention at Gratz.
Okay, awesome. Christina Walrath, I think you're with me, right? Is like my support, I believe, on here. Okay.
Yes, I am. Hi, everybody. It's good to see some familiar faces. I'm one of the directors, and I'll be popping in and out, and I'm supporting another training as well, but I'm just here to offer some mastery-facing support if there's any questions or anything.
Awesome. Thanks for being here with me, Christina. Leon?
Hey, good afternoon. Leon Michael. I right now I have 10th graders for math support for geometry.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Lynette? Lynette, can you hear us? Oh, there you are.
I can hear you now. I'm Lynette Shockey. I'm at the Shoemaker campus, SPED case management. Hey, everybody from Gratz.
And then Miss Weber, if I'm saying that right.
It's Weber. Hi, I'm Miss Weber. I am at the Mastery campus and I do math support. I do other things, but why I'm on here is math support for the 11th grade.
Okay. Math or ELA?
Math.
Okay. Excellent. Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. And thank you, Miss Weber. I appreciate that. The 1B threw me off, that I went to Weber. So, all right, folks. Well, thanks for introducing yourself again. Please feel free to pause me throughout and come off mute. And then a refresher for what is IXL. It is built on these 5 components. We've got our personalized preschool to 12th grade Pennsylvania aligned curriculum, the instructional resources and classroom engagement tools. I know a lot of you all are secondary, and so we've got the math videos from 3rd up through geometry now. If you haven't yet seen those, I'll be showing you those. And then for ELA, we actually just released our first batch of ELA videos last week for preschool and kinder. So for most of you, it won't, but if you've got any kids that are on a really low reading level, we released them for preschool and kinder phonics skills. And then we're working on the 6th through 8th grade writing videos right now, hoping to have those out actually next week. So for any ELA folks, just be on the lookout for those. And then the first of its kind assessment suite, I'm actually going to talk about that in this training, especially since for you all, as a lot of you are case managers or support teachers, so utilizing the diagnostic in writing your IEPs or 504s or individual plans. The district-wide analytics, they're at the district level, the school level, teacher level, student level. And then for our districts like Mastery Charter that purchase the IXL at a district-wide account, we've got our district partnership on implementation services so that you have a dedicated person looking at the data with you and a point person you can reach out to like me anytime you need it. So here's our agenda, and actually there's one piece in between the welcome, or I guess it's included in the welcome, of just giving an overall, a couple overall announcements to make sure you know some of the lay of the land. So we'll start there. Then we're going to look at diagnostic data and do a review on all things related to diagnostic. And then I've broken down the analytics reports into student habits and student knowledge, and then implementation strategies. So the whole focus of this session is finishing the year strong. I will say, if you haven't had IXL PD before, then it might behoove you to, and actually I have a recording of like a 101 or a 1.0 session. This is more of that 2.0 session where I'm going to go into most of it's the data report. So I'm assuming that you've got a foundational level of knowledge on IXL. If that's not true, then just know this. At certain points, you might say, well, I've got some foundational questions. And if so, just please email me and I'll put my email again at the end of the presentation, but I can send you a recording of the 101 session. Okay, so first, just so that we're all on the same playing field, I want to make sure you have some of the one-on-one knowledge of really quick overview of that. When you're on IXL, you've got a few different options. You've got the diagnostic assessment that students can take. And if you click on assessment, you can actually then click to assign it to students. You'll see the little star here. So you can click to assign it to students and have them take the diagnostic assessment. It is intended for them to take it initially, and then they would, after they take the initial assessment, they would go into it each week, just a little bit, answer about 5 to 10 questions each week to stay up to date so that they're always working from their most up-to-date plan. And then if you do have them do the weekly maintenance, there's never another, bulk assessment like there would be with traditional benchmarks. They would only have to take the one initial assessment and then just a few questions each week. So their data is constantly updating based on their practice. And we'll talk more about the diagnostic in just a little bit. And then there's also the skills that you can assign. So I would recommend a few things. One, if you hover over learning in your account and click on skill plans, I would first recommend that you start with the skill plans. There's a lot of different kinds of skill plans. For example, any folks who support ELA, the Learn to Read skill plan is a brand new one for your students who might be lower level readers that are learning to read. This is a great skill plan. The standard skill plan. So if you click on either math or language arts, you'll see broken down by the different grade levels. So let's say that you support students in Algebra 1. you could click into Algebra 1 and see the standards on the left-hand side and the IXL skills there on the right. You can hover over it to see some sample questions to make sure that's the skill you want to assign. And then when you are assigning, you've got 3 different options. You can either right-click on the skill and copy the link and then paste that link into Google Classroom or a learning management system that you use. You've got the skill code right here that you could tell students, and then they could type in, let's see, what was that one? That one was PQH. They could type in that skill code at the top of the page in the search bar, and it's the first one that pops up, matched skill ID. Or you could star it. Starring it is IXL's way. That's the, you would assign it directly on IXL, so you can hover over that star and then click to assign it to everybody. Or because a lot of you all are support teachers, then when you assign it, you might be assigning it to individual students. So you could click on a class or all students and click to expand that and assign it to individual students like so. In addition to the standard skill plans, there are textbook skill plans. If you utilize any textbooks, I encourage you to peruse through the page and find the different textbooks that you might use. Or down at the bottom, let me scroll down to the very bottom, you'll see our test prep and assessment skill plans. So specifically for the Keystone exams, these are listed here. So any students who are taking the Keystone exams, for example, if you click into Lit or Algebra 1, you'll see it broken down by, you know, with Algebra 1, they've got the 2 modules. Well, here are the 2 modules on IXL. So then you could click on either of those or scroll, and then you'll see all the different skills that are included that students would need to practice. And then same thing for assigning. You've got either the star feature, copying the link to the skill, or that search shortcut code that you could provide students with. And then same thing for the literature Keystone exam. You pull that up. You've got the 2 modules with fiction and nonfiction, and then the skills for students to practice there for ELA. And lastly, if I have any teachers, actually, let me go back here. If any of you are ELL teachers, or you have some ELL colleagues that use the WE to Access, definitely show them that, or the SAT, ACT. You've got students, I know a lot of you said you were high school folks, so you've got where students can put in their own ACT or SAT scores, and it will generate a personalized study plan for them based on their SAT scores or ACT scores. Okay, so that's just, again, a quick overview of making sure that when you are finding skills, I would start first with skill plans right here. The other way, especially as support teachers, that I tend to end up finding myself a lot of the times was I would find myself in the topics view. So under math or language arts, depending on your subject, if you click on topics, you'll see where we've organized all the different skills into different topics. So for example, if I click, for example, on algebra, thinking about algebra readiness, this gives you the vertical alignment of everything. So because so often our kids, even though they might be taking algebra 1, they're on a 3rd grade level. Well, this shows you then here's what they need to work on in 3rd grade that will lead up to that algebra 1, you know, skill. So all the prerequisites, or if they're above grade level, then you could have them work on, you know, the content that comes beyond that. Same thing for language arts. Science also, I think Cindy, you were science. You've got the topics view. That's one that I use the most for science as well, just because so often you'll see it might be listed in 7th grade on IXL, but then you actually use it in 8th grade or 9th, you know, so I would ignore what the grade level is because kids have access to all of the content. The topics view makes it really nice to just find the skills that you're looking for. And same thing, you've got, if you hover over it, you've got the search shortcut there, the star feature to assign it, or right click and copy the link to the skill. The topics view is quite nice. Okay, let me oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about the assessment. I didn't realize I have mine pulled up right now, like the keep your real-time diagnostic up to date if we wanted to like test a student early or something. It doesn't seem, I don't know if this is just, if I click the star, it just doesn't bring up specific students or classes. I would be assigning that to everybody then.
That's right. So for the diagnostic, it is all or not. Right now, it's all or nothing. It's yeah. If you click, you can't hover on that one. So it's either all or nothing. Now you could, let's say you have it starred. When students log in, here's a student view. So they'll they'll see it listed here. So if you didn't want them to work on it, you could just tell them skip over that and work on the other assignments that you've got assigned to them. But if you want them to work on it, then it just puts it at the very top of their list of assignments.
Okay. And then I have another question. A staff member I work with is there some reason why like they would assign the assignment, but it would not show up on the student view? Like what would be standing in the way of that? The students are assigned to them, like clicking on the names specifically to assign that assignment. Is that like a tech issue or?
Yes, or it could be, the only other thing that could be is if this teacher assigned them a skill in a content area that the students don't have on their license. So, but I don't know. So that could, the only other option would be that, like, let's say a teacher assigned them or tried to assign them an ELA skill, but the kid only had access to math, then they wouldn't see the ELA skill listed on their assignments.
Okay, no, that's not the case. All right, thank you.
Yeah. And if you wanted to check it too, you could come in. It could also be sometimes it's user error where the teacher accidentally clicks it twice or whatever and unassigns it rather than, but if you hover over learning and click on recommendations, click on the recommendations wall here, you'll see your whole list of students, and you can then click on their assignments and you can see their assignments and which teacher assigned it. It'll have their last name listed there. So you can see which teacher assigned the skill, and if you see the assignment from that teacher, you'll see it there, or if not, then it's either a device issue or user error. One of those two things. Oh, Christina, Walrath, thanks for putting in the attendance list. Okay, let me actually, while I'm thinking about it real quick.
What period?
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I'm gonna also just pull up because I know I need to give folks the that survey at the end. So let me pull up Jennifer's email just so I have that here. Okay, thanks, Christina again. Okay, so don't forget, Christina Walrath put it in the chat box, but the attendance link, just make sure you click on that attendance link so that you get credit for being here, the tiny URL there. Okay, I'm gonna pause there. Anybody else have any questions just on that, the intro and a refresher from the past? Okay. All right, we're going to move then into the diagnostic and diagnostic data. So with the diagnostic, it is, again, it's a unique in that it is intended to be given as an initial assessment and then a little bit each week to keep their levels up to date. So often the first question that I think is important if you're going to use the diagnostic is to notice who has not ever taken an initial assessment. Who do we not have baseline data for? And then we'll also go through the rest of these questions of if they did take the initial assessment, who's making limited or negative growth. We're going to look at the action plan, and then we'll look at the quick view report. So I'll be coming back and forth from the live site to this slide. So first, let's start at the progress and growth. Hover over analytics and click on progress and growth. And then once you're there, pause on yours and just look at mine. I'll explain a few things on my data, and then I'll have you dive into yours. So again, hover over analytics, click on progress and growth, or if you're already in analytics, it's right over here on the right-hand side. You can just hover over progress and click on progress and growth. Now on my data, you're going to notice I don't have an overall growth metric. The reason is because in order to have an overall growth metric, you have to have at least 30% of your students with current levels. If you don't have 30% of them that are currently up to date, then yours is going to look like mine, where you won't have a growth metric, and it will just say encourage them to use it more regularly. You can notice your filters up at the top. So it does default to all students, but you can select one class at a time. It also defaults, this is actually a brand new feature. It just came out a few weeks ago. It defaults to this school year, but you can change the date range to either a custom date range or just the last 30 days if you want to see just what they've done there. And you can export this report. Okay, so a couple things to notice. As I scroll down, I'm going to draw your attention right now just to the right side of this report, the diagnostic growth section. And what you're wanting to see, under the starting level is, do they have a starting level? If they don't, like notice on mine, Bradley, his says keep diagnosing. That means he's never finished the initial assessment. I have no baseline data for him because he hasn't finished. He started it. If it says start diagnosing, it means they've never started the initial diagnostic. And then if they do have a starting level, like Aiden has a 570 in ELA, or Mila has a 530 in math, because you can see the little pyramid is math, the little book is ELA. If you hover over that, it tells you what date they took the initial assessment, which is nice because let's say that you had a student just transfer in and they took the initial assessment on February 8th. Well, if you see 0 growth, it's not going to be concerning because they just took the initial assessment on February 8th. Whereas if you see that they took the initial assessment on September 5th, then ideally you'll want to see growth since September. So starting level is where you're going to first look to see who has taken the initial assessment. If they're currently up to date, they'll have a current level. You might have some students, notice on mine, Kayla has these 2 little dashes in the current level column. If you see that, it means that she took the initial assessment. She took it on September 15th, but right now she's not currently up to date. Either she hasn't gone back in to get her score up to date, or maybe she did, but it was 2 weeks ago. So now she's outdated. But right now she does not have a current level. And so without a current level, we can't track her growth. If they have both the initial and the current level, then you'll also see a growth column there on the right-hand side. Okay, so take a second, scroll through your progress and growth report and identify, do the students who you want to have taken the diagnostic, do they have a starting level, or do you have any that you're like, I need to get them to finish the diagnostic? And current level, see if you have any students who you need to get back up to date, or do they have a current level? And then we're going to talk about growth here in just a minute. So take a minute, look through your data, and then we'll come back together and look at growth. Okay. One thing I forgot to mention is what the numeric value means, just as a reminder. So if they are at a 570, then that would be 5th grade 70% of the way through, or 5th grade 7th month. If they're at a 740, like Oliver is, 7th grade 40% of the way through. Or that's where they started. Here's where they are now. Okay, and then growth metrics. So growth, the 10 points of growth is equal to 1 month of learning gains. 100 points of growth is equal to 1 year of learning gains. And then I am going to paste, let me paste this so you have this document in the chat box as well as a resource. Let me paste it here for you. Okay. This just shows you, let's say that I'm an 8th grade or a 7th grade teacher, and right now we're in February. So this would be, if a student was on grade level, we would want to see them in the 710 to 810 range. If they were above grade level, anything above an 820 at this point in the year for a 7th grader would be considered above grade level. Below 610 to 700, or we would consider far below 0 to 600. Again, this is for a 7th grader. And I share this because what you want to think about is ideally by the for where they are in April or May when they take the PSSAs or the Keystone exam, for them to have a strong chance of passing the Keystone exam or the PSSAs, you would ideally want to see them in that on grade level category. Now, if you've got a student who came to you multiple years below grade level, getting them to on grade level may not be realistic for this year, but just closing the gap a little bit, making progress bit by bit, that's ultimately going to be the goal. So what should an appropriate growth goal look like? Well, it depends on a few things. One, it depends where they started. If you've got a 7th grader and like Mila, your 7th grader started at a 530, well, technically to be ready for 8th grade, I would bring her up to an 800, but making 270 points of growth, is that realistic? It depends. It depends what type of intervention she's getting. Is she getting pull out? Is she getting small group and then one-on-one support? So when you're thinking about growth goals, you want to think both about where they started and about what supports they're getting at school. If this student is a 7th grader and he started at a 740, then technically he just needs to grow 60 points this year to be ready for 8th grade. If a student starts off the year, I'm going to keep using 8th grade as an example, as an 8th grader, and they're at an 820, or at a 900, let's say they're already at a 900 when they start the year, then just maintaining may be appropriate. So consider where they started and where you ultimately want them to end, and then what supports they're getting. That's what you want to think about in terms of your growth goal. So now, let's say that they were a student who started on grade level, on or slightly below. Then at this point in the year, you would want to see that they've made 50 to 60 points of growth in the growth column. Because then if they're on grade level, to stay on grade level, they do need to grow the 10 points of growth a month. Or if they're below grade level, then yes, they're growing 10 points of growth or even more to close the gap. So if they're on or below, you'd want to see at this point in the year 50 to 60 points of growth. So what I want you to do is find a student who either, like I've got a couple here that have gone backwards, okay? Or so you find a student that has made negative or limited growth. So on your account, find a student who's made negative or limited growth. They're not where you want them to be yet. And so we just finished this first step. We've looked at who hasn't finished the initial assessment that we might have wanted them to, and then who's making limited or negative growth. Identify one or two. Here's where we're headed next. We're going to go over to the diagnostic action plan, and we want to see what should they be working on? What are some of their lowest skills? Okay, so since Oliver here has made negative 10, I'm going to use him as my example. So now we're going to go over to the diagnostic action plan. So hover over diagnostic and click on diagnostic overview. Hover over diagnostic and click on diagnostic overview. A couple refreshers from this report. One, again, pay attention to your filters, class filter, subject filter. Okay, you can export this one, and because a lot of you all the districts have set up snapshots, which is when they capture the levels for the student. If you click your export icon, you'll see a window pop up with the different dates that you could go back, and if you wanted to see where students were at each of those dates, you can export that data. And then also, if you hover over the little lines, you'll see where students are grouped by similar levels here. And then I'm gonna go down to my student Oliver. He's the one that I'm following because he's made negative growth. So find the student who you've identified that's either making negative growth or they aren't making as much growth as you would like to see by this point in the year, and click on their name. If you click on a student's name or if you click on the PDF, it pulls up their diagnostic action plan, this PDF report. Pro tip, this larger PDF icon is a bulk or a batch download. So if you ever want to download everybody's or one class's reports all at once, so you're not having to click every kid's name, you can just do this one as well. Okay. So once again, pause. I'm going to walk you through my thinking with Oliver, and then I'm going to have you do it on yours. So I clicked into Oliver's account. He's gone backwards 10. And I'm looking for two things. One, I want to see what is his lowest strand level. And then two, what are some of his lowest skill gaps? that are on his plan. So I've got a 5th grade skill gap here, a 6th grade one there, and 798, 35, 90. His lowest strand is fractions. Okay, so that's, I want him to prioritize his lowest strand. He's got some 5th grade gaps there. Ooh, he's got a 4th grade gap in geometry, 4th grade gap there. Okay, so I'm probably going to have him prioritize fraction and knocking out these 5th grade skills. Or he's also got some 4th grade gaps. I'd probably have him knock out some of those too. So when I say knock him out, I mean, when he practices these skills, in order for this to fall off his plan, he needs to reach at least an 80. If he reaches an 80 and he's doing well on the skill, it will fall off his plan. Now, some folks have emailed me and said, Megan, a student just clicked on the skill on their plan and they're at an 80, but it's still on their plan. Why is that? Well, because there are a couple other factors, which is, let's say that a student practiced this skill 2 months ago and they got up to an 80, but then just now today they missed a question on it on the diagnostic, which would indicate that they haven't retained the knowledge. Then it will pop back up on their action plan because they need to revisit that skill. So there are some times where they might click into it and they're like, well, I'm already at an 80. Why is it still my plan? And that just means they must have missed something, so they need to revisit it. So I would just tell them, if that's the case, either go to something else or see if they can get to the next tier. Like if you're at an 80, try to get to an 85. If you're at an 85, try to get to a 90. And just remember also, I forgot to mention this, our recommendation on IXL in general is when kids are practicing, that their goal is to reach proficiency, which is a score of 80. Anytime they're on it, whether it's a skill you've assigned or a skill that's been assigned here on their action plan, the goal is that they would reach proficiency, that score of 80. And we recommend that you give them the 80-20 guide, is what we call it, which is tell them if they've reached an 80 or if they haven't reached an 80 in 20 questions. So the 80-20 guide, your goal is an 80. If you haven't hit that in 20 questions, pause and let's revisit it together. Let me pair you up with somebody else so that they're not just sitting there 45 minutes into a skill, clicking away, getting frustrated, and now it's turned from productive struggle to unproductive struggle. That's not the goal. So telling them the goal is an 80, but if you've hit 20 questions and you're not there, pause, let's go over it together. That gives you some good parameters of healthy practice. Okay, so look at the kids that you pulled up, the plan that you pulled up, and what are the lowest, what's your student's lowest strand, and what are some of the lowest skill gaps that are listed on that plan? Take a second, identify those, and then unmute if you're looking at your data and you're like, wait, I've got a question. Unmute and tell me what your question is.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the language arts one. So a lot of times we monitor just the overall reading.
Yeah.
That score is based on reading strategies and vocab, correct?
That's right.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. The overall reading is based on, it's mostly reading strategies unless there's questions that they've answered in vocabulary that also impact reading comprehension. And then overall ELA includes all strands. Okay, here's the third step that we're taking. So you've identified now from their report what's their lowest strand and what are the lowest skill gaps that they need to practice. And here's our third and final step in this sequence of analyzing growth. We're going to head over to the student quick view report. And the two things we're looking for here, what are they working on? So have they actually been working on their plan? And how are their habits? And the reason we go to this report is because 95, probably 99, honestly, % of the time when folks will say, Megan, this student has negative growth, or they've only grown 10 points this whole year. What's going on? It's 99% of the time because they are not working on the skills that have been identified on their plan. Sometimes they're only working on what the teacher assigns, but they're never actually working on their plan. Or their practice habits need some improvement. Okay, 9 times out of 10, it's one of those two things. That's why we're looking to see, are they working on their plan and how are their habits? Okay, so here we go. Hover over students, click on student quick view. hover over students, click on Student Quick View. Now, again, filter options, there's a couple critical ones on this. If you are looking at the language arts plan, so if you're Alicia's looking at language arts plan, make sure under subjects, you click language arts so that you don't even have to worry about looking through the math data. Or right now, if you're looking at math data, click on math. If you don't have a subject option filter, it means that you only have your one subject identified in your profile and settings, so you won't even have to worry about it. And then the date range defaults on this report to the last 30 days. You may want to see this school year if you want to see everything they've done the entire school year, or maybe just marking this like third marking period. So you could adjust it to a custom date range. All right, so scroll down and then I'm gonna walk you through Oliver's and then I'm gonna have you walk through yours. Okay, notice on mine, oh, hold on, I'm just looking at his math one, so I'm gonna change it, math. So remember, for my example, Oliver fractions, what's his main one? 4th and 5th grade content. Okay. Wait, babe. All right, so notice for Oliver, the last bit of skills he's worked on he did work on some fractions there over a month ago, but since then he has not done anything with fractions. So recently he's not done any practice with fractions. He's also got a random pre-calculus skill there and a calculus skill. He's also got a lot of 8th grade content. So he's not consistently working on the skills that I just identified from his plan. And more for him is his habits are atrocious. So or need some improvement. So notice over here, this is what you're looking for, okay? You're going to compare the questions column to their score. So remember the 80-20 guide, you're wanting to see around 20 questions, and that they're consistently reaching an 80 over here. So if you see something like 77 questions and he's at a 40, especially if he did those 77 questions in 14 minutes, that's a little alarming. Or 69 questions and then it's at a 66, 24 questions at a 24, this one at a 0, 38. So he does not consistently stick with skills until he reaches an 80. And we've got a lot of instances here where he's well above, the 20 to 30 question mark. So for Oliver, the two things are, one, I would direct him back to working on those 4th and 5th grade and specifically around fraction skill gaps that have been identified on his plan. But even more so for him, I'd be talking to him about his habits and making sure he sticks with skills until he reaches proficiency or asks for help if he's struggling to do so. And then I'm seeing around about 20 questions per skill. $20 to $30. If they want to go all the way up to 100, I would let that be up to them. But your parameters, like with the 80-20 guide, with 100, it'd be like 100 to 30 to 35 questions. So if they're trying to go for 100, I'd say if you haven't hit 100 by 35 questions, pause so that they're not getting burnout trying to get to mastery. Okay, so now your turn. Take a minute, find your student that we've been tracking this whole time and look at what they've been working on. Are they working on the skills from their plan? And what do their habits look like? Do they need some improvement? Okay, any questions on the student quick view report or the sequence of steps? Feel free also to take a screenshot of this if that would be helpful, because this is, I mean, truly, you'll probably just repeat these 3 steps as you go throughout the year, whenever looking at and trying to unearth why, if you've got a student who's not making as much growth as you want to see, you'll just keep going through this. Are they working on their plan? What is their plan? Are they working on it? How are their habits? Okay, let me check the chat too, just in case. All right, no questions so far, so I'm going to keep it moving, but interrupt me if you need me to pause. Okay, we talked about growth goals. And let me just make sure I cover these. We talked about the diagnostic overview. Using that, you can do the bulk export or the bulk print. The other piece that we haven't yet touched on is the strand analysis. So the strand analysis really is the key to making your small group instruction and lesson planning even more tailored and effective. I'm going to give you an ELA example for this one, although teach math, you can use that as well. But you'll notice when you click into your different strands, it organizes students into small groups based on similar levels and shared difficulty areas or shared topics that they need to practice. So you can see in reading strategies, I've got 4 students here that are at a pre-K to kinder level, and it gives me everything that those 4 students can benefit from practicing. Then I move up to my next group. This group I might actually split in half if I'm pulling them because it's a large group. And if you click on any of the skills, you can see some sample questions. So a lot of times what I'll see is teachers will pull those students into a small group with them. They'll scroll through and go through a few questions. They'll project their computer, go through a few questions, and then have them keep going. Here's the code. So you could tell this group, okay, UB2, y'all type in UB2, keep it moving. Next group, here we go. You go through a few questions with them, and now you tell that group, type in 4J8, you all keep going. Your highest group, you actually could potentially just pair them up with one another and then see if they can work through that skill together, because then that's going to create some differentiated an enrichment activity for your students in the highest group. But I was working with one teacher recently, an ELA teacher from Missouri. By winter break, her class had made 150 points of growth. So 3 times what was typical. And I said, tell me what you're doing. And then I actually got to Zoom and watch her class in motion. I mean, it was seamless. But here's what she did. Every day she pulled, so on Mondays, she would get them back up to date. She would have students get up to date in their diagnostics, step into the arena and get up to date. Then Tuesdays, reading strategies, Wednesdays, vocab, Thursdays, writing, Fridays, grammar and mechanics. So every day she pulled groups based on a different strand. And when I asked her why, I said, why not just focus on one for a few weeks and go next? She said, well, because I wanted students, every strand is different. It has different groups, different kids in that group. And I wanted them to hear from different learners and hear from the way that different people think. Also, there's going to be some strands where they're higher. So I wanted them to feel a taste of success on some of those strands. And then she said, also what I'm noticing is it's shifted my class culture, because some classes, some groups, my highest kid is in the same group as my lowest kid. And they've started to realize it's not that we're smart or not smart, it's that we all have different strengths and different areas of growth. And I said, oh, that's really powerful. So that's just her strategy of doing it. But obviously a lot of different ways you can utilize that for small group instruction. But it's just nice because it does automatically group your students for you and provide you exactly the content to cover. Any questions on the strand analysis? All right. And then you also have the personalized practice and instruction. So again, remind students to practice their recommended skills in their lowest strands, or during one-on-one, you're focusing on skills in their lowest strands or their lowest skills. This is the student view. So on the student view, when they click on assessment, and you also have this, you just have a drop-down menu of all of your students. They see their Starburst page as well as you. And then stepping into the arena, that's the that's the assessment, the weekly assessing. So when they step into the arena, they'll get back up to date. So let me show you an example here. Okay, so here's a student that's fully up to date. And it even says you're fully up to date. All right, now here's what happens. So she comes in, here's her lowest strand. She works on these skills. Let's say she gets to an 80 on these skills. They fall off this list of recommendations. And then on the student side, they have that button, step into the arena. So if she doesn't step into the arena, then hers will start to look like Bradley's, where they'll go back to a range and they won't be updated. So as soon as this is why the weekly maintenance is important. So he actually, it's time for him, since he's back at a range, it even says keep diagnosing. So they would click step into the arena, and every time they step in, it I would just tell them answer questions until you see the screen pop up that says you're up to date. I think I have an image of it here. I'll come back to the others. So every time they're up to date, they'll see this screen pop up. And then now, once they see this screen pop up, now go work on your skill plan, your action plan, go work on that. The other thing that students have for individual growth tracking, students have this student summary report. This is new, it just came out this school year. You can get to it if you hover over analytics, click on student summary. You will need to go to a student who has taken the diagnostic. So make sure you choose one from your drop-down menu that has diagnostic data. Otherwise yours will look like Bradley's where there's nothing. But if you have a student who's taken the diagnostic, then they will be able to see, and I did that kind of quickly. So let me just, it's under student, the student summary reporter. If you hover over analytics, click on student summary, and then choose the student from your drop-down menu. But you'll see it, their levels, how their levels have changed. Students also have this on their account. So if I navigate over here to my student account, when students click on analytics, they'll see that information here. But again, they have to have taken the diagnostic, otherwise they won't have that part of the report up. One thing that's important to note, they do not get a new pinpoint every time they're up to date. Right now, the data engineers are actually working on making that an update. But if you see something like this where you're like, I know that the student has been updated since October 29th, or like right now it says that they're up to date. On this report, it will add a new data point when their level changes for you. So if the student still has a 520 like they did on October 29th, that's why they don't have another data point here. So they'll get a new data point when their level changes from that time. This report's also nice for sending to families. It does show you what they've learned. So here's all the skills they've reached proficiency on. Here are the skills where they're struggling, where they've missed at least 3 questions, so they could use some extra support on these skills. Suggestions from their teacher or their biggest opportunity for growth, and then ways that the parent can support the student at home or the family member can support the student at home. So this report is designed to be given at family conferences. But again, students can also track it. If you go to print this report, you can choose to include the action plan along with it. So then you can print both the report and the action plan simultaneously to provide for families at conferences. Any questions on the student summary report? And then what does an example plan look like? So this is just that, it's just an example, but here's an ongoing diagnostic implementation. So this was one we called it Maintenance Mondays. On Mondays, they would step back into the diagnostic arena, where on their end, they click on assessment, or if you've assigned it, they click on it and then click step into the arena, and they answer questions until they see this screen pop up. Then we had what we called Teacher Tuesdays and Thursdays. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, they worked on skills we assigned so that they were getting exposure to on-grade level content or whatever was aligned to what we were teaching in class. And then we called it Action Plan Wednesdays and Fridays. On Wednesdays and Fridays, they worked on skills from their action plan. Again, always with the goal of work to that score of 80. If you've hit 20 questions and you're not there, pause, we'll revisit it. Okay, that's everything with the diagnostic. Before we go into other analytics reports, any questions on the diagnostic?
I have a quick question. I mean, I think I know the answer to that. Like, I had a student who at the very beginning of the year scored very high in language arts. Then the next time she tested, and I watched her test, like I thought she was, but she like dropped 100 points. And then she tested again. I like, again, tried to watch to see like, was it a stamina or motivation, test fatigue? And she was pretty on point, and she went up from that, but like, it still shows that she's still like negative 60, even though she grew, the 40 points. Would you suggest that I've just been having her work on the most recent diagnostic action plan? I should always do that. I shouldn't go back and look at the first. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I recommend. Work on that's how she'll grow the most, if she works on the most recent. And if there's ever if there's ever a time where you're, they take it and you're like, I'm not sure. Well, there is like, maybe if you're not sure that the data is accurate, or if sometimes it's also that, which I know you watched her take it in this case, but let's say that she had taken it at home, or, whatever it could have happened. You can always email tech support and request a reset of the student's diagnostic. You do usually need to include an admin or somebody on the email with you, just because once they erase the data, it's gone. So the admin needs to sign off like, yep, we have approval to completely erase that data. But just know that that's, at least keep that option in your back pocket if you ever need it. So, yeah. Okay, data informed instruction. So I've broken the reports I'm going to show you here down into student habits and student knowledge, and some of them are going to be a refresher. So we've already talked about it. So you'll feel like, oh, I already knew that. The first one with student habits is the quick view reports. This one we talked about. Again, with this one, you're looking at the ratio of questions to the score. So under students, it's that first report, student quick view, excuse me. And you can see there the date range. And again, I'm going to show you an example. I showed you Oliver before where he needed some improvement. Here would be an example, Nova, of a kid, student with excellent, exemplary habits. Notice almost all of their skills there, or actually all of them, are well under the 20 question mark. And this student consistently sticks with the skills until they reach 80. So this would be, the student is knocking it out of the park when it comes to habits. You can also, if you ever want to see, if you click on a student's name, it takes you to the second report there, the student usage. If you ever want to see when they logged in and what they did during that, like, you actually need to see times. This will show you the time that they logged in, and you can see what they did during that time. So this one, 2 skills they practiced. This skill, they were on it for 7 minutes. This skill, they were on it for less than a minute. And in less than a minute, they answered 6 questions. Of those 6, they missed 4 of them because they were flying through those. And if they answered 6 in less than a minute, it's what, 10 seconds a question. And you can click through again to see some sample questions they received during that time. So this is also, if you click on diagnostic, if you see diagnostic, you can see how many minutes and how many questions they spent in the diagnostic arena, as well as skill practice. So this one's the student usage. I got here. You can get here from just going to student usage. I got here from the quick view. I clicked on an individual student's name, and then it takes you to the student usage, so you can see a more granular level detail with time stamps. Okay, that's one with habits. And also, I will say with student quick view, I usually start off the year, or right now, if you scroll through and you're like, "Ooh, our habits need some improvement," then you're probably going to visit this report a little more often at first. And at the beginning of the year, I usually visit the student quick view a couple times a week, and I'm just looking to see how do I keep habits strong? Are they working on what I want them working on? Are we at around the 80-20 guide for each one? And then once habits get in a place where students are strong and they know that you can see everything they're doing, then you can reduce, how often you're looking at this one, and maybe it goes to once every 2 weeks, or, maybe just once a week, whatever it is. But once you get in a place where their habits are consistent, this one you can reduce how often you're looking at it. And then again, this one's a bit of a refresher, but I'm going to show you one other feature here on the progress and growth report. So you are going to want to, and it's almost like taking the student quick view and just turning it into numbers. So on the progress and growth, last time we talked about, when we were here earlier this session, the diagnostic growth column, but now I want to point your attention to the skill progress data. Now, this is anything that they've practiced, whether it came from you or from their action plan. Questions answered. And then these 3 are nested. Here's what I mean by that. Bradley, he opened up or practiced 114 skills. Of the 114, he reached proficiency or higher on 58 of them. Of the 58, he took 41 of those all the way to 100. So for him, there are 41 skills at 100. There are 17, whatever, 58, what is 40, 17 skills that are just at 80 to 99. And then whatever the gap is here, another 50 skills, 50, 60 skills that are below an 80. Okay, so these are all nested. If you see a gap between proficiency and mastery, that's fine, because remember, mastery is the above and beyond. What you want to see, not as much of, is a gap between practice and proficient. Because what this tells us about Aiden is he has 330 skills that he has opened that are below proficiency. So whatever gap you see between practice and proficient, that's how many skills the student has opened that's below an 80. And ideally, you want to see as little of that as possible. That's also, again, thinking about habits, that can also lead to, at times, negative or limited growth if you see a huge gap there between practice and proficient. The other thing, I have a district in New Jersey that is, this semester, they're really hitting home of our recommended goal of reaching proficiency on 2 skills a week. So actually, if you are setting that goal of communicating to students, I want you to reach an 80 on 2 skills a week on IXL, you can adjust the date range now and see, okay, in the last 2 weeks, how many skills have they reached proficiency on? So if you adjust the date range, and remember, if it's 2 skills a week, then in the last 2 weeks, I'd want to see 4 skills that students have reached proficiency on. So I'm just going to look at the skills proficient column. Bradley's at 2 for the last 2 weeks, so he still needs 2 more. Aiden's at 3, Mila's at 3, Nova is at 4 skills, and she started 4 skills, and all 4 of them she reached proficiency on them. Great job. So Micah met the goal, so the this is just another way where if you are communicating goals like that to students, then you could track that using the date range filter. Any questions on student quick view, student usage, or progress and growth report? One implementation strategy idea is called Follow-Up Friday. As you have probably seen now, I like alliterations. So this is not every Friday, but this is, let's say you wanted to do it once a month or every 2 weeks. But teaching students how to click, this is a student view, how to click on analytics and go to their progress report. And it shows, let me show you from a student view. So click on analytics, click on progress. It shows everything that they've worked on for the school year. And so you could teach them to follow up on skills they've started that are below an 80 and below the 20 question mark. So in this case, well, and this is just a demo, but I need to follow up on everything I've started. You can see I'm at an 18. That's my current score. I'm at an 18 here, and I've only answered 3 questions on it. So I'd follow up on that one. This is the code, ZPW. So they would type in that code, ZPW, and click, and it picks them right back up at 18 where they left off. You also have this report. If you go, it's under progress. It's the student progress report. So you can see what a student would see when they're on it. And so then it's nice because, again, you can see, like for Bradley here, he's at a 100, he's at an 82, an 81. So he's not going to follow up on any of these. Oh, he's going to follow up on this one. Well, maybe he's at a 72, but he's answered 23 questions. So maybe he follows up on it. Maybe I say, if you're at 20 questions or 25 questions, don't follow up on it without asking for some help. That part I would leave up to you. But this one for sure, like he's at 22, he's at his scores of 22 and he's at 20 questions. I'd probably want him to reach out for help, because he's not going to reach an 80 by 20 questions, or he's already there and he's at a 22. But this strategy just helps students. One, it's good for spiral review, but stick with it, because sometimes they'll just click into IXL and they're like, oh, next skill for the new day, and they forget to go back to ones that they've practiced before. Other ways to build strong habits, just asking, what are you learning from the explanation when you get one wrong? As you all have probably seen, they'll click past that explanation so quickly and pay it no mind, but they're not actually using the resources there. If they're on a math skill that's third through geometry, making sure they're using the video, watching the videos. If they're on a preschool or kinder ELA skill, watching the video, or soon to come 6th through 8th grade writing skills will have videos. And then we talked about this. communicating the SMART score goals with parameters. Okay. Next set of data reports have to do with student knowledge. So we've looked at habits. Now let's look at what do they know and where do we then lean in and reteach or provide some small group support. The first report is my all-time favorite. It just came out last year. Hover over skills. Click on skills practice, the very first report. Hover over skills, click on skills practice. Okay, this report is nice if you've assigned skills to students, because then this is going to show you where they're struggling. Now, it does default the last 7 days, so you may want to adjust that. For example, right now I'm going to adjust mine to say this school year. Here's why this is so helpful. Notice that I've got, and here, let me do this. Okay. I have one student who's struggling with matching quotations with their themes. And I have 15 students who are struggling with, is the sentence declarative, interrogative, imperative, or exclamatory? So I'm not going to do a whole class reteach when only one of them is struggling on matching quotes with their themes, but I might if I've got 15 struggling on this. So it lets you know where to spend your time. Or math example, I have one student that's struggling on slope-intercept form graph and equation, but 18 that are struggling on standard form graph and equation. And if you click the little caret on the right-hand side, it will expand it and it shows you where everybody landed on that skill. So notice for this skill that I'm showing you, standard form graph and equation, there's 3 levels of rigor. And you'll see their score is in parentheses. So Edgar has an 81, Elias has a 75. And if they're struggling, if it's a trouble spot, this little trouble spot indicator means that they've missed at least 3 questions in that level of rigor. So sometimes, let me see if I can find an example. Okay, here's a good example. Notice that Mateo has an 86 and he's got a trouble spot, whereas Kyrie also has an 86 and no trouble spot. So the little trouble spot indicator has nothing to do with their score. It has everything to do with how many questions they've missed in that level of rigor. So even though Mateo's at an 86, he's missed 3 questions at the level 3 difficulty in that skill, which may mean, I honestly probably would not work with him since he's above proficiency. He's got the gist of it, but it does let me know that he struggled at the higher level rigor questions. Okay, so take a minute, hover over skills. Whoops, let me go back here. Hover over skills, click on skills practice, change your date range to this school year, and then scroll through, find a skill that has more students struggling than another one. Click to expand it, see where they all landed. Click on this level, click on a student's name, see where you end up if you click around. Take a minute, do that on yours, and then we'll come back together. thoughts on this report? Any questions from it, or have you found it before? Is this new to folks? How could you see yourself utilizing this report?
I mean, just for me, this has been really good, eye-opening of how to just, I have a lot of thoughts going on in my head, but just making sure for certain skills that a lot of it's like made sense for why like students aren't mastering certain skills. It's helped me put into perspective more of like what I can do to be responsive for my caseload students as I pull them in study skills. So been really helpful from that perspective. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to move us on from this one. And next one is just to make sure when you go to the student knowledge, or when you go to the student knowledge, when you're thinking about student knowledge, go to the score grid report, make sure you've pinned it by the skill plan. So this one, if you hover over scores, click on score grid report, and you'll see it defaults on their standards and skill plans to off. But if you turn it to your standards or to your skill plans, you do need to have it pinned. Oh, so hold on. Let me go back. If you don't have your skill plans pinned, so when I mentioned to use your standards, let me pin Algebra 1. I'm going to pin 9th grade ELA. And I'll also pin the Keystone exam. Okay. Cindy, for you, for science, maybe better to not do your standards and skill plans pin, but if you're math and ELA, I would recommend do it by skill plans, but up to you. Hold on, did I not pin them? I thought I did. And then whatever you've got pinned will appear here. There we go. So you'll see your standards there or the Keystone exams, and then you can click to organize it broken down by the Keystone or by your standards, and you can see then if you've got a few different options to show only currently suggested skills or only practice skills. You can also highlight 80 and above so that then you can see the different skills where you might want to spend some time, or like factor out a monomial, nobody has it highlighted that's done it, or also where you haven't really spent much time or you don't have a lot of coverage as well. So the score grid is almost like a digital grade book. You can export this one. So if you're somebody who likes a spreadsheet, I'd recommend exporting that, and you can see, play around with the spreadsheet and see the raw data. And then, and like I said, you can organize it all in different ways. But that is a score grid report. So if you're just looking for numerical values, I'd recommend that one. The last report I'm going to show you is the trouble spots report. So if you hover over trouble spots, this one is nice for small group instruction and for thinking about, I showed you the diagnostic strand analysis, which is nice for small group instruction based on shared level. Trouble spots is good for small group instruction based on shared difficulty area. So the trouble spots, I showed you on skills practice, a little trouble spot indicator. That means that the students have missed 3 questions in a level of difficulty. Well, this report organizes students all by their shared difficulty area. So I've got 16 students. So you see how many students are struggling on a single skill. So 16 of them, are struggling on this skill, on this item type. Here are some exact questions that they've missed. Here are the students. If you hover over their names, you get extra information like their current score, how many questions they've missed. And newly released, you can now start a group jam directly from the trouble spots report. So you click to start a group jam, and I was in a classroom recently where the teacher said, okay, she pulled up trouble spots, she clicked this, and she said, if on your screen it says join the jam, join me in the jam. If it doesn't say that, then go work on your action plan. And so immediately she just created and started off class in a differentiated way. Whereas if it was something they were struggling with, they were with her. Otherwise, they were working on their action plan or something else she assigned. So if you're not familiar with group jams, There's a couple resources and videos I'll point you to, but Group Jam puts everybody on the same skill at the same time and puts them all on the same question so that then you can use IXL to teach that skill or teach the lesson. So I definitely recommend checking out Group Jams. Okay, so take a minute, explore your trouble spots. This is class trouble spots. The second report down is individual student trouble spots. You might need to adjust the date range on this one too. It does default to the last 30 days, but you can change it to this school year. So take some time. I'm just gonna give you 1 minute, go to your score grid report or the trouble spots report and let me know any questions that you have. And then we'll move on to our last section. All right, any questions on score grid or trouble spots? Okay, last section. Now you've seen all the different reports, not all of them, but a lot of the different reports you can use. And now I want to talk about how you can use IXL to make the review fun and engaging for students, especially during this last semester and getting into the test prep season. So group jams, again, I talked about this. I'm going to show you this video that models group jams for you and shows you where to find them. All right, pretty brief overview there. But as you can see, the data comes in, you immediately see who's getting it right or wrong. When you choose to review, you can choose to do a question at the same level of rigor or a harder question or an easier question based on how many kids got it right or wrong. And then, oh, I just got a notification. Hopefully I'm still there. Said my internet cut out for a second, but hopefully you can still hear me. One other idea is the bingo board. So these are actually on the blog. If you go to blog.ixl.com. Here we go. And just search bingo. It's the very first one that pops up, make your own bingo board. And you'll see there's ones in color and then a black and white version. But you can actually click on those and download them, and then you can edit the squares. So you could type in the little 3-character code for the square or link the skill into it. You're still assigning them the same skills that you would if, in Google Classroom or in on through IXL, but it just makes it feel different, and you can tie incentives and prizes to it. If they earn bingo while reviewing their skills. This was something I actually saw in a classroom where the skills that the teacher assigned were on the game board. And then the skills that came from their diagnostic, this kid didn't write any, but they would have them here. And then when they would reach proficiency on the skill, they would put the star so the teacher and student were able to track how much they had done based on skill that the teacher assigned or from their diagnostic action plan. This is a personal favorite, Beat the Teacher. So because you see different questions than what students see, excuse me. This one, let's see, is WCE. A lot of times what I would do is I would pull up the skill itself. Okay, now not all skills lend itself to a game of Beat the Teacher, but some skills do. So if it's in ELA, vocabulary, grammar, a lot of those, now reading passages, not so much. In math, word problems, not so much, but something like this definitely would. So they would pull it up on their computer, I would pull it up on mine and project it, and then I'd say, okay, when I say go, everybody start. And if you beat me in reaching proficiency, yell out, like got it, or I'm there, and then we'd go. And I'm pretty cutthroat, so it was not easy to beat me. But no, sometimes I'd let them, or sometimes they would just genuinely beat me. But it was just fun. And again, when they hit a certain number of points, we would earn class game or whatever it might be, some sort of class-wide incentive. Just mixed it up, made it fun for them. And then making students feel seen for the work that they're doing on IXL. Leaderboards. If you haven't set one up, set up a leaderboard. You just set it up and then IXL tracks it for you. So to set up a leaderboard, hover over My IXL and it's under engagement tools. It's the very last option there. Again, under My IXL, under engagement tools, it's right here. And then you go to add new board. Now you've got a few options. Here's the teacher view. You can have everybody that's on your roster all compete in one leaderboard. That's if you select all students, or you can do a leaderboard for each class. And they would just compete with the students in that class. Then under what to record, you've also got some options. Oh, there we go. Number of questions, number of correct questions, time spent, number of skills proficient or skills mastered. I would recommend either doing number of correct questions or number of skills proficient, as I've seen students find some loopholes with these too, with the number of questions and time spent, but not with these. So number of correct questions or number of skills proficient, I'd recommend. Then you choose what subject counts and what grade levels count. So you might say, okay, if you're a 7th grade teacher, maybe 6th, 7th, and 8th grade content counts, but that's it. Then you choose the start date and end date and click create leaderboard. Once this starts, then when it ends, whenever you set the end date, it will automatically generate a certificate for any student who came in 1st, 2nd, or 3rd place, and it generates a top 10 list. So I've seen where teachers will do a weekly one or a monthly one, and they put up the top 10 list for February, top 10 list for March, and so on, and see, who stayed consistently on the top 10 list, where did it differ. So leaderboards are a lot of fun. This was something that we actually did, and this was with middle and high school students. We did sticker charts on the walls where we set IXL goals for the quarters. They knew they needed to reach proficiency on one. The first quarter we did 1, next quarter we did 2, so it was 18 skills for the quarter. And anytime they would reach proficiency on a skill, they would show it to us, then they would go up, put a sticker on the sticker chart. We publicly would track it and then celebrate, like Kenya just met her quarter 3 IXL goal. And we did a luncheon for all the students who met their goals. We had it blocked off for students who doubled their goals, or the VIP section for students who reached proficiency on 50 skills for the quarter, which, you've always got a couple of those overachievers that'll do that. So it was just, again, a neat way to make them feel seen for the work they were doing. This was another idea when students would meet their goal in IXL. They got a picture taken, put up on the board. And then the certificates, these are, again, they're automatically generated by IXL. So this was something where the teacher would it was a student job she would just print them off, and then students would put them up on the wall, and they told the students the goal is to cover these walls by the end of the year. Okay, that's all that I have for you all for this session. I'm gonna put in here let me pull it up, a survey link. So Jennifer asked, and then I'll also hang on if anybody has questions or wants to look at more data, we can definitely do that. But she asked me to share this at the end of the PD session. I just put the link there in the chat to share the survey link. So if you would complete that survey, if you want to complete a second one for me, here's my individual survey. But really the one for Mastery Charter is the one that you definitely need to do for Jen and the team. And then if you have any questions, feel free to stay on with me. Otherwise, that's all from me, and feel free to head on out. But thank you all so much for attending. Fill out the survey. Let me know if